welcome to today's tailoring class. This is the beginner's class in tailoring, and we are going to be learning about the machine, the parts of the machine, what they do, how to get a bobbin, a thread on a bobbin, how to thread your machine to help you to sew, how to change your needle. We'll talk about that, how to change your foot, because sometimes you may need to change it from the basic foot to a zipper foot or to a buttonholes foot or other foots if you want to do it. We'll learn how to load your bobbin and take out your bobbin, and a few stitches. We'll do a few stitches as well. So let's get in. So this, I have two dials in front of me. Well, this is a single talent machine, and it does basically everything. If you ask me, as a beginner, you can go for this, or you can go for a much lesser machine with that hasn't got a lot of properties. But if you start with this, I think you should be fine. And you can have this in the brothers also have a machine similar to this. So basically most of the machines you will find have similar properties on this. Others, the advanced ones, may have a bit more features than this one. But if you have something like this, I think you should be able to start your tailoring project with this. So there are two stitch dials in front of me. Now this is my stitch length dial. You can see it written over here, and there are 4 markings, actually 5, 0 from 0 to 1, and then 2, 3, and 4. So this tells how long your stitch length will be, the length of your stitch. If you want a very small tiny stitch, then you'll be using 1. But if you want the average or the normal stitch used in your basic tailoring, like everyday tailoring, used in stitching cotton, polycotton, then you're going to be putting your stitch length between 2 and 3. So that'll be 2.5 here. That is for your general stitching. If you want very big stitch, let's say you are doing a gathered stitch, then you are going to change it to 4. But when you're doing a general stitch or doing your everyday stitch thing, then it's between 2 and 3. So that'll be 2.5. That's for the stitch length. This dial is for your stitch design, so different stitch patterns on it. We have the zigzag, we have the blanket stitch, the overcast. So there are different stitch designs on this. Depending on the kind of stitch you are going for, you just turn your dial to align with the mark here. Then it tells me that I'm going for this stitch dial. Now we can see these red stitch dials over here, here, and here. These ones are used in making buttonholes. So the middle one helps you make the top of your buttonholes. So the buttonholes start here, and then you come over here and finish the other end, and then you go to the other side and finish the other end. So we'll get to buttonholes, and they'll be able to talk about this properly. But for a normal stitch, like everyday stitch, then it should be here for an everyday stitch. If I want to have, you can see that I have a thin line of my normal basic stitch here, and I have a thick line here. Now if that's what I want, then I'm going to have to turn my stitch dial to S, and that is what will take me, to that stitch dial. So this should be here, the S1 should be here, picked on. If I want, I'm looking for this thick markings. If I'm looking for this thick marking as well for this one, then it should be on S1. But if I'm looking for the first one, then it should just be on, whatever stitch length I'm looking for. So for basic stitching, you should be going for this design, and then in between 2 and 3 is where you're going to set your stitch length. Then when we come on top here, we see 2 dials here. This determines the width of your stitch, and this is the tension of your stitch. So for general stitching, your tension should be on 4, and when you're doing your gathered stitch, then you should go into 9. So 9 gives you a loose tension, and it enables you to pull your stitching to be able to gather your fabric as you stitch or when you're done. But for general stitching and basic stitching, it should be on 4. You don't touch your width stitch dial when you are doing your general stitching. So when you're just doing your normal straight stitching, you don't touch the width dial, you just leave it. The only settings you do is your stitch length, which has to be 2.5, and that is where you're going to leave it to do all your stitching. But once you decide to do a design stitch like this, then you're going to have to touch your stitch width dial. I'm going to turn it like this so that you can see. This determines how wide your stitch will be. So the higher the number, the wider your stitch width will be. So at least you can get an idea of it. And whilst I've done this, let me come to the tension again. So this is for the tension, and it's got numbers on it. Sometimes when you stitch, you see that your stitch has pocketed a bit, and this means that there may be problems with your stitch dial. So every fabric and then the tension you give it to. But for general stitching like cotton, polycotton, and all of those, your tension, if your tension is at 4, you should be able to stitch beautifully with it. But once you start stitching and you see that your stitch length or your stitch has pocket, you have to be checking on your tension. Those are one of the things you have to be checking on when you're stitching, and you see that your stitch has pocket a bit and it doesn't look straight, flat, and it has some ripples on top of it. Then you should quickly check at your tension to see probably the tension you've given your machine is not good for the fabric you're using. So all of that should come to mind as you stitch your garment. This is your reversed stitch dial. So when I want to go backwards as I stitch, you have to do, there's something they call a double stitch. A double stitch helps you secure the beginning of your stitch and then the end of it. So you stitch forward a little bit, then you press this and go back and forward again to secure your stitch so that it don't unravel. And as you stitch along, when you get to the end, you press it again and then you go backwards and forward to just secure your stitch. It's just like making a knot to prevent your stitch from unraveling. So that is what this lever is for. Then let's come to the top of the machine here. You can see this is for winding your bobbin, so for putting a thread on your bobbin, which we'll be doing very soon, and you get to see it. And then this hole is also for, there is another thread bar that goes into this here, and I can't find mine at the moment, so I can't do that demonstration for you to see. But just like this one is laying flat, there's another one that goes on top of it that stands up straight, and I'll talk about it in a minute, why we have that, or when you should be using that and when you should be using this. So this helps you to do your threading, and this machine kind of makes it easier for you because it's got numbers on it. So from here, when you have your thread here, you know you're coming here next, you know, because it's got numbers on it. If I'm going to be doing my bobbin winding, which I'll be doing in a minute, from my thread here on the spool, my thread spool, so this is called the spool. So from here I'll be coming in here, and then I'll go around this way over here to do my bobbin winding. But if I'm not doing my bobbin winding, I'm just going to go in from my thread spool over to this groove here. Then under this groove, you can see the drawings on it, under this groove coming down, and this makes it easier because it's got numbers. So from 1, you know you're coming to 2, so I'm going to go down, go under this lever here. It's not a proper lever, it's like, you know, a groove. Go under it, come up again, and then go through this. But when I turn it a bit, you can see it come out, so you have to turn it on the side, on the wheel, hand wheel side. It will come up, and then your thread goes in there, come back down, and then over here at the bottom, and then another groove at the bottom before it goes into the needle eye. We'll be doing all that in a minute, and you get to see what it is. Okay, now let's talk about the foot. So this is the foot of your machine, and if you want to change the foot of the machine, there's a lever at the back here. You push it towards you. I'm going to try and see if I can show you the lever on this side. So there's a lever at the back here. You just push it towards you like that, and then the foot drops off. So that is how to take the foot off. I'll show you how to put the foot on in a minute. Now you can see these markings on your plate. Now the stitch plate says there is a 3/8 and then the 5/8. This is your seam allowance that you leave, and usually on commercial patterns it says that you should leave a seam allowance of 5/8. So as you stitch, this will help you gauge the width of the stitch allowance you have to be leaving. And I'll demonstrate that also in a minute when I start to stitch. So let's say I'm stitching and I want to leave a stitch allowance of 5/8. It means that my fabric will be lining up to the 5/8 stitch line here. You get it? So as I run my stitch, it means that in the end I would have left a stitch allowance of 5/8 over here. So that is what these markings are for. Now I'm going to try and put on the foot of the machine. To try and put the foot of the machine back on, there is a groove underneath this thing here. So there's a groove underneath it, and you have to try and lift it up. I don't know if you can see it. So there's a groove underneath here, like that, over there. And that groove must line up with this groove here. So it's when this little bar locks up in that groove, then you would have fitted your foot. So you just have to line up your foot against the groove and then drop your machine from the back down, and then when it's properly lined up, it will just pick on the groove. So you have to, you know, try and push it in place, pick on it, and then you can lift it back. So this is the lever I picked up. You drop it and then you pick it up, and then it raises your foot. So if I want to drop or change my foot, I'll be going to push this towards me, and then it will drop. And when I want to put it back on, I'm going to drop this, try and align my foot against the groove some more. You get it? And then when it picks on it, I'll get it also. I'm going to try and align my foot, and it's picked on it. So that is it about changing the foot and then fixing it back on. So this is your bobbin case. This is where the bobbin sits. There are some machines that have a top load. So this is a top load bobbin, and there are other machines that have a front load. So you don't have this. All this is covered, and then your bobbin is here. So you have to pull your drawer out, and then open this bit of it, and then you'll be able to load your bobbin. So that is called the front load, and this is the top load. So this is a top load bobbin, and then we would see how to put on a bobbin in a minute. Okay, so like I said earlier, this is your spool. The spool is for the thread, and that is where the thread sits whilst you are stitching. So the thread sits here, and then the thread is supposed to be coming under it and not over it. When it goes under it, it helps the thread will come off the thread case easily. So it sits here, and this is the horizontal spool, and then there is a vertical one, like I said earlier, but I can't find mine. I'll be able to demonstrate it without it anyway. And this holds the thread in place. So whilst your thread unravels as you stitch, it's not going to come off the spool because there is a stopper that keeps it in place for you to unwound your thread. Now let me talk about the features of a thread and when and why you should use the horizontal spool instead of a vertical one. For this thread, you can see that this thread has a cross wound pattern. So the thread is wound like that in a cross wound pattern, and then there are other threads that are wound like that, and those used to be the olden way of winding the threads, but there are few threads in that pattern. So when you have the ones going all around it like that, that goes on top of it, that sits on your vertical spool. The reason why you use that thread for a vertical spool is the thread is able to draw off, the thread is able to draw off easily and feed itself into the machine as you stitch, so you get good stitching and your stitches don't pucker or there's not too much tension, because you've given it the proper position for it to sit. For some machines you can have them on top here, other machines you can have it seated here, and then your thread goes there, sits there, and then it comes on top of it, so it unravels easily like that. But when you have the cross wound, just like what I have, if you can see, like the cross wound, that goes on the horizontal spool, and then the thread is supposed to be releasing from the top and bottom and not from the top like this. It's easier, gives you the correct tension when it comes from the bottom. So actually in tailoring or in stitching, everything is about tensioning, and the least thing you get wrong can affect the quality of the stitch you get. So it's all about the way you do your threading, how you position your thread on the spool, and a few little things that you do that will give you the perfect stitch quality in the end. So it goes on like this, and your thread is supposed to be releasing from the bottom, coming under like that, and then your stopper goes on top of it to keep your thread in place. So I've spoken about the threading. Now we are going to be going on to winding a bobbin for you to see. So this is what happens. So the thread is going to feed off the horizontal spool and come onto this metallic one here. I hope my hand don't get in the way, but let me see, just so that you can see. Go on over there, as you can see, and then I'm going to come here. So come on like this, and you're supposed to be able to lock it between here and here. So there's a little groove here, and that is where it's going. You see, lock it there like that, so it goes like that, and you can see the drawing up here. So it goes, you see, and that is what I did like that. Now when I've done that, I'm going to get it onto the bobbin, and there is a hole on the bobbin here, and that's where I'm going to pass my thread through. So I'm going to go like that, get it into the hole, let it sit on the bobbin spool and push it towards this thing here, and that is called the bobbin stopper. I'm going to push it towards the bobbin stopper, and as I press on my foot, it will begin to wind round it, and when it's full, the bobbin stopper will, there's a sensor in the bobbin stopper, and that will stop the machine when the bobbin is full. So you just do a little bit, and when you've put in a little thread on it, you stop and you cut this off, because you can't be holding it throughout, and then you carry on winding your bobbin. So you do that until it's full, and when it's full, you see that your bobbin stops moving. It doesn't move anymore, because there is a sensor here that is able to tell that your bobbin has gotten the right thread on it and it needs to come off. So you push it back away from the bobbin stopper like that, lift it up, and then you cut your thread, and then you're done with your bobbin. So we've done winding our thread. I'm going to drop it into my bobbin holder. You can see it, I've just dropped it in. There is a groove here, a little groove here, and that is where your thread needs to go. Your thread, this thread needs to slide under this groove. So if you put your hand on your bobbin gently, just to give it a little bit of tension, just slide your thread under that groove. You hear a little click sound, and that it means that you've been able to put it under it properly. Now if you miss this step, your stitch quality is going to be affected. So you drop your bobbin in there and make sure you've done your click sound. If you are doing a front load, you just put your bobbin in the bobbin case, and then just push it there, just push it in there like that, and you also hear a click sound, and that will tell you that your bobbin is in the right place. When you've done that, you just cover it with a plate. So So we are done with the bobbin. When you want to get the bobbin out, you just push this black lever away from you like that, and then it will lift the plate up when you want to put it back, and then you press it down. So now let's go on to do the threading of the machine. Threading of the machine, I'm going to get the thread out of here, because when it comes here, then it's going to go for bobbin winding. I'm going to try and get my thread under this lever, this white lever here. I'm going to go under the white lever, like that, come down into this groove, just drop it down, go around it, pick it back up, and then go into this metallic lever here, go into it, come back down again. You see the numbers 3, come down. Okay, when you come down, you're going to go under here, you come down through the groove, go under there, and then there is another lever here that the thread has to go behind, so it goes under it, bring it down, go under that groove again. So if you look at it properly, I'm going to try and lift my machine so that you can see. So I've gone here, and then I've gone here, okay, before I go through my needle. So when I come from up here, go up and come back down here again, 5 is coming down into this one here, okay, and then into this one here. Somebody will ask why all these turns, because as you go round doing your threading, you're giving your thread the right tension it needs to be able to give a proper stitch. Just before I do my threading, let's learn how to change a needle. So if I want to change a needle, I'm going to turn this knot towards me like that. Get it? Sometimes it can be quite difficult to turn it, so you can get like a screw. The machine has a screw, so you place it in that groove here. If you can see it, my hand is not in the way. You place it in the groove, and then you turn it towards you. So every machine has it. It's just to release your needle for you. And because I'm holding my machine like this, I may not be able to. Otherwise, I should be holding the needle to get it out. So my needle is out. Now once the needle is out, let's talk about the needles. So this is my needle. It has a flat side, and that has numbers on them, and then it has a rounded side. So when you're going to fit your needle, it is this flat side, which I just showed you with the numbers on, that goes against the machine. So it's that flat side that is going against the machine like that. So that side is what, the flat side is what lines up against the machine like that in the hole. And I'll do that in a minute, but let me talk about the numbers on the machine. So with the Singer, usually the Singer comes with, I think, 3 or 4 spares extra machine needles, and they usually put the needles that are used for general stitching. So you see the 90-40, if you can see here, 90-40, and 90-40 is used for stitching fabrics that are not heavy. So like your cotton, your linen, your polycotton fabrics, you'll be using the needle size 90-40, and you would have that also written here. I don't know if you can see it. I hope my camera will be able to capture it properly, but if you can't see it, it's there on the flat side. You have the numbers written there. Yeah, I think you can see it now. You have the numbers written there, so that will tell you the size of the needle. So 90-40 is for your cottons, your linens, your polycotton fabrics. So those are your light medium weight fabrics. You'll be using that. And for the lightweight fabrics like your silk, your organza fabrics, those ones, your organza, your satins, you have to use a needle size 75-11 for that. So like I was saying, your lighter fabrics like your linen, your silks, your organza fabric, your satin fabrics, all of those fabrics are in the group of the lightweight fabrics. So you would be using a needle size 75-11. And for your denim fabric, those are the heavy fabrics, your denim fabrics, your upholstery fabrics, your canvas fabrics. You'll be using 100/16 or 100/10. You get it? So the way they write this here, 90/14, maybe you can see it properly. For that also you'll be using 100/16 or 100/10 for denim fabrics and heavy fabrics. So that is the bit for the needles. Now I'm going to try to fit my needle back up, and because I lift my machine for you to see exactly what I'm doing, it's going to be a bit difficult, but I'm going to tilt and manage to do it so that you will see it. So like I said, the flat side of my needle, when you take your needle out, you see what I'm talking about. The flat side of the needle that has the numbers goes against the machine like that. So that is the one that will be going towards the back to do it. So my flat side goes against the machine, and then I'm going to screw my thing back into place. I can use my screw to help me screw it properly back into place. So that is it about the needle, threading of your needle and changing your foot. Now I'm going to thread my needle now. Put my thread in to my needle, and all the time we go, when we are threading the needle, it's from the front here and then it goes at the back. That is how you do your threading. It goes in the front and then you pull it from the back. So that is what I'm going to do. These days the machines come with a needle threader, and that helps you to do that. And my needle threader is here. I'm going to leave the machine again for you to see the needle threader. So this is the needle threader. It's like this lever. You pull it down and then it gets locked in the hole of your needle. So as I pull it down, it gets locked in the hole of my needle. So I'll just wrap my thread around the hook and then pull it out, and then you see it's pulled out my thread through the back for me. And then I just get something to draw my thread out, and then I've done my threading already. So the next step is just to lift my foot and tuck my thread in. But don't forget, we have to try and get this bobbin thread out of the case to the top here. So I drop it like that and I lock it under this groove and make sure it's properly locked. Then I turn my wheel to pick up my thread. It's picked it up now, and then I pull it up out. Then I can close the plate, and then on the side here I can cut my thread here. So I'll just do that and cut my thread, just tuck it under my foot, and I am done. That is it about the learning about the sewing machine and how to use it as a beginner. Hope you enjoyed this class. I'll see you in the next class, where we'll be talking about seams and how to finish your work professionally with the inner seams, all of those properly done. So hope to see you in the next class. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe and share, and have a lovely day.